Evelyn Vance opened her eyes and knew instantly that something had changed. The change wasn't in her hospital room, a suite outfitted with the kind of luxury she herself had approved for the VIP wing of her clinic empire. It was in the air she breathed, heavy yet fleeting, like the haze over a hidden marsh. It was in the muffled, cautious movements of the staff, who now acted faster, quieter, and with a strange, suppressed sympathy. But most of all, it was in the way Chief of Staff Dr. Marcus Hayes spoke to Paul Garrett just outside her door. Evelyn's own medical knowledge, acquired through running her hospital empire, told her there was no hope left. That was the change. The facade of medical possibility had finally fallen. Welcome to Betty's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. She closed her eyelids to a narrow slit, an old business negotiation trick she'd used for decades when she wanted to hear what was being said while others believed her distracted or oblivious. The sedatives they claimed to administer numbed her body, but not her mind, which now functioned with the diamond-like clarity of something about to shatter. "Paul Garrett," Dr. Hayes said, his voice sounding tired and guarded. He was an excellent doctor, but he usually saw Evelyn not as a patient, but as his owner. Now he sounded human, almost broken. "I have to be honest. Evelyn's condition is critical. The liver failure is progressing despite everything we've tried. Her organs are failing one by one. We're doing everything possible. Maximum 3 days, maybe less. I am so sorry." Silence, a silence that roared in Evelyn's ears. It was the silence of a death sentence, signed by the biology of her own body, but delivered by another hand. Evelyn felt her heart still beating. 3 days. It meant the doctors were finally admitting what she'd been feeling since last week. Her body was failing. 49 years old, a massive empire of private hospitals, commercial properties in downtown Atlanta, bank accounts, assets, a life built through iron discipline, sleepless nights, and the hard lessons of a failed first life. And now, 3 days. She thought of the past 20 years. The first marriage ended. There were no children, just the business. She built, she expanded, she acquired. Everything she owned, she had earned herself, long before she married Paul. Her fortune was her shield, her armor. But at 46, she had suddenly realized the house was empty and the evening seemed endless. Paul Garrett had stepped into that void. A good-looking man, 10 years her junior, attentive, charming. He worked as an administrator at one of her hospitals. When he first asked her out to dinner, Evelyn felt like a young girl. He had reignited the light in her. She had needed that warmth so desperately that she hadn't wanted to see the cold shadows in his eyes. The door opened. Evelyn didn't stir. Paul walked in. She caught the scent of his expensive cologne, the one she'd given him for his birthday, a scent that now smelled sickeningly sweet. He sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. His fingers were warm and well manicured. Evelyn's breathing grew shallow. She felt every muscle in her body tense internally, while outwardly she simulated the perfect relaxation of a sedated patient. He believed she was unconscious due to the strong medication. The nurses had told him so this morning. What happened next, Evelyn would remember until her last breath. Paul squeezed her palm, stroked her wrist with his thumb, and whispered almost tenderly, yet with an icy hardness underneath, "Finally, I've waited for this for so long. 3 years of waiting, 3 years of patience. Waking up every morning to look at that cold, busy face, holding this hand, touching this body whose only worth was the money it controlled." Evelyn tensed inside, but her body did not betray her. She lay there, a stony image of calm, while a storm of horror and rage raged within her. "Your house, your millions," Paul continued, and there was an emphasis in his voice she had never heard before. It wasn't love, not care, not even neutral respect. It was pure, unfiltered scorn and triumph. "It all belongs to me now. 3 whole years. For 3 years I've played a role, listening to your moral lectures about business and responsibility, smiling at your friends, lying in bed with you. 3 years of contempt, hidden behind expensive cologne and purchased attention. Do you know how much I hated you, Evelyn? Your arrogance, your know-it-all attitude? You thought you bought me, didn't you? A young, handsome man for your empty life? But I had a much better plan." Paul laughed softly, an ugly, grating sound. He leaned closer, and Evelyn smelled the slight hint of alcohol he often drank in the mornings, a sign of his internal emptiness. "And now it's finally over. The tea was a masterpiece, a minimal dose every day. So subtle, so slow. They blamed it on stress, on overwork, on your age. A perfectly executed plan, Evelyn. No one will ever find out. You will die, and I will inherit everything you worked so hard for." He stood up, released her fingers, almost impatient now that the mask had fallen, adjusted the blanket with feigned concern, and walked out. Evelyn heard him talk to someone, probably the nurse, in the hallway, telling her to take good care of his wife, that he would be back soon. His voice sounded compassionate and distraught. The perfect performance until the last second. When the door closed, Evelyn opened her eyes. The ceiling blurred not from weakness, but from rage so hot it coursed through her body, because everything that had happened in the past few months suddenly clicked into a clear picture. The gradual deterioration of her health, first slight nausea, then weakness, dizziness. The doctors blamed it on stress and overwork. She had thought so herself. How stupid she was to trust him, the man who had presented himself as a rescue from loneliness. But 3 weeks ago, when the next episode happened right in her office, they brought her to the clinic. Her blood counts showed strange abnormalities. Evelyn, who mistrusted even her own doctors, secretly sent a blood sample to an outside lab in a different city, Charlotte. The result came 5 days ago, when she was already lying here. The toxicological analysis detected traces of a substance that shouldn't have been there, a rare drug used in palliative medicine to ease the suffering of the terminally ill. In small doses, it causes drowsiness. In large doses, it leads to liver failure and subsequent organ shutdown. Evelyn hadn't wanted to believe it then. She dismissed it as a lab error and requested a repeat. The second analysis confirmed it. And now, after Paul's words, there was no doubt. She was systematically poisoned, for months. The realization was a shock that turned her rage into cold, calculated determination. She would not die before she had taken everything from him, everything he had murdered her for. Evelyn tried to sit up, but her body would not obey. Her hands trembled. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to formulate a plan. 3 days. If the doctors were right, she had 3 days left to put everything in order. She knew Paul, knew he was handsome, charming, and internally empty. But she thought a comfortable life would be enough for him. How foolish she was. He wanted more. He wanted everything. And he had underestimated how sharp her mind was, even as her body failed. She needed an outsider, someone invisible, someone who had no ties to her old life. Evelyn slowly turned her head toward the door. Someone was handling a bucket in the hallway. She heard water splashing, the scrape of a mop. She called out softly, "Girl?" Her voice was rough and much weaker than she intended. The noise stopped. After a few seconds, the door opened a crack, and a cleaning woman peered in. A young, petite black woman with dark hair clipped at the back of her head. Her face was plain, friendly, without makeup. Evelyn had seen her before. She wiped the floors in the hallway, changed the linens, emptied the commode. Hard, thankless work. Evelyn saw the fatigue deep in her eyes, but also a suppressed strength. This girl had been pushed into a corner by life. "Are you feeling unwell?" The young woman stepped closer, concerned. She smelled faintly of disinfectant and damp cloth. "I'll call the nurse immediately." "No need." Evelyn forced herself to speak clearly. "What is your name?" "Chloe. Chloe Jefferson. Chloe, close the door. I need your help." The girl was confused. Her eyes widened slightly, but the sternness in Evelyn's gaze made her obey. She closed the door. She came closer and looked into Evelyn's face. Are you okay? Do you need a doctor?" "I'm fully conscious." Evelyn looked into her eyes. "And I need you to do something for me. Do not tell anyone I am lucid. Not my husband, not the doctors. But call my attorney, Jason O'Connell. His number is in my cell phone, in the nightstand. Tell him Evelyn Vance asks him to come immediately. Personal matter." Chloe shook her head, her hands beginning to fidget. The fear of losing her job was greater than her curiosity. "I can't do that. That's not my job. If they find out—" "If you do everything I say—" Evelyn paused to gather strength. The effort of speaking was enormous. "You will receive enough money to never work as a cleaner again, never mop strange floors or empty commodes again. I mean it. I know you have debt, Chloe. I know you cared for your mother until her last breath and are bearing the costs of that care. This amount will pay off all that and more." The girl looked at her in disbelief, but something sparked in her eyes. Hope. Desperation. Evelyn saw that this girl was clinging to any straw. Chloe thought of the monthly payment for her deceased mother's nursing home that she still had to pay off, of the empty pantry in her small apartment. You're serious about this?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Absolutely. But we have little time. Call O'Connell. Now." Chloe hurried to the nightstand and took out the phone. It was the latest model, heavy and cool in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the contacts. She found the name and pressed call. Evelyn heard long rings. Finally, someone picked up. "Mr. O'Connell, excuse me, I'm calling from the hospital. From Evelyn Vance. She asks you to come urgently." The lawyer asked something. Chloe swallowed. "Yes, she is conscious. She says it's a very urgent, personal matter." She sounded like she was reciting a secret oath. She handed the phone to Evelyn. Evelyn took it, barely holding on. "Jason, it's me," she said. Her voice was steady now. Her rage gave her the strength. "I need to draw up a new will today. Come immediately and bring a public notary with you, and not a word to anyone. I am being murdered, Jason. This is my last chance to secure my revenge." O'Connell was silent for a second on the other end. Then he answered briefly, his voice metallic. "I'm on my way. I'll be there in about an hour. I'll bring Tiffany and everything necessary." Evelyn gave the phone back to Chloe. "Thank you. Now just wait here and be quiet. When he arrives, stay as a witness. Do you understand?" "But why me? Why do you trust me?" Chloe was overwhelmed by the sudden intimacy and weight of the situation. Evelyn smiled weakly, an expression of cold pleasure on her pale face. "Because you are an outsider. You are not part of my circle. My husband cannot buy you or intimidate you. You are uninteresting to him. You have no loyalties he can break, and I need you exactly as you are. Pure, desperate, ready." Chloe sank into the chair by the wall, horrified by what was happening. The realization that she held a wealthy woman's life in her hands was overwhelming. Evelyn closed her eyes and gathered her strength. 1 hour. She had to hold on. Inside, she repeated Paul's hateful words. Those words were her fuel. The time passed agonizingly slowly. Dusk was settling outside. The October day was ending early. The hospital light shone cold and relentless. Chloe sat silently, occasionally glancing at Evelyn. She no longer saw Evelyn as her boss, but as a dying enigma who was opening the door to a new life for her. Exactly on the hour, the door opened and Jason O'Connell stepped in. A 54-year-old fit man in a suit whose eyes betrayed the sharpness of an experienced lawyer. He had been Evelyn's rock, and his expression was now serious, almost grim. He was followed by his assistant, Tiffany Morrow, 25 years old, with a tablet in her hand and an alert expression. O'Connell's first action was to scan Chloe by the wall with a quick, assessing glance. "Evelyn Vance." O'Connell approached the bed and looked at her face. What's going on? Close the door, Evelyn commanded. Sit down and listen carefully. I have no time for pleasantries or surprises. O'Connell nodded to Tiffany, who closed the door. Chloe remained standing by the wall, her breathing shallow, as if afraid to move. O'Connell noticed the tears in her eyes and her pale skin, silently noting these details. O'Connell sat down and pulled out a voice recorder. "May I record this, for legal clarity?" "Yes, you may. I want every word documented." Evelyn told him briefly and clearly, but her voice was filled with cold anger about the test results, the toxic substance in her blood, and Paul's words half an hour ago. She spoke of Paul's triumphant look, of the moment she realized she wasn't sick, but being murdered. O'Connell listened without interrupting, but his face grew harder and harder. The news of the poisoning didn't completely surprise him, but Paul's open display of triumph did. "Do you have the analysis reports in your safe at home?" "Yes. The code is my mother's birthday. Get them and make copies. That is the evidence against him." "That is the basis for a criminal case," O'Connell said slowly, his voice deep. "But first, we must secure your will, or the entire estate will fall to your husband by law. Legal logic must precede human revenge." "That is exactly why I called you. I want to leave everything to this young woman." Evelyn indicated Chloe with a weak movement of her head. "Chloe Jefferson, and she will pay you generously for your services. We will include that in the will as well." O'Connell turned and scrutinized the cleaning woman. Chloe was deathly pale, but nodded in agreement. The thought of becoming a multimillionaire was too abstract, but the idea of denying Paul the inheritance began to produce a cold satisfaction in her. But why her? O'Connell's question was professional, but also personal. "Because she is here, because I trust her, and because I have no time for doubts. My entire estate is premarital property. I have no children. It is mine, and I can dispose of it as I wish. Draw up the will so that Paul cannot contest it. Secure it against every legal attack." O'Connell nodded, his thoughts racing. "We need a notary and a doctor to confirm your capacity to execute the will at the moment of signing. Without that, the will is vulnerable. Organize it today, immediately. I need an independent witness who gives Garrett no grounds for attack." "All right. Tiffany, call the on-call public notary and find an independent neurologist or psychiatrist from another hospital. They must come immediately. Ensure this doctor has no contact with Hayes." Tiffany went out and took out her phone. O'Connell turned to Chloe. His gaze was insistent. "Ma'am, do you understand what is happening?" Chloe nodded uncertainly. "Not entirely. It's terrifying. You will inherit the entire estate of Evelyn Vance. The house, the hospitals, properties, accounts. You will be a very rich woman, but you will also become a target for her husband. He will try to contest the will. Perhaps he will try to intimidate you or bribe you. Or worse. We are talking about a murderer here. Are you ready for that?" Chloe was silent. She took a deep breath, feeling the pounding in her temples. The possibility of never being hungry again was a powerful incentive. "Do I have to be?" "Yes, because we will do everything right legally, but psychologically it will be a war. He will not leave you alone. You must be steadfast, Chloe." Evelyn interjected, her voice now very weak. "Chloe, I am not asking you to be a saint. Once you have the money, do what you want with it. But I ask you one thing. See this poisoning through to the end so he goes to prison, so he doesn't kill anyone else, and reward generously everyone who helps you. Do you promise me?" The girl looked at Evelyn, tears in her eyes. It was the last request of a dying woman. "I promise. I will seek justice for you." Half an hour later, the room gathered. The public notary, an older gentleman with a briefcase and seal, a psychiatrist from the neighboring hospital, a woman in her 50s, O'Connell, Tiffany, Chloe, and Evelyn herself. The atmosphere in the room was tense, solemn, and shadowed by the anticipation of death. The notary looked at Evelyn with respect, witnessing how she was using her last hours to stage an act of revenge. The psychiatrist conducted a quick but thorough examination, asking questions. What day is it? Where are you? What is the name of the President of the United States? Evelyn answered clearly. The doctor noted on the form, after checking Evelyn's pupils and evaluating her response. Patient is oriented in time, space, and to person. Consciousness is clear. Legally capable to execute a will. Signature, stamp. The final legal hurdle was cleared. The notary opened his laptop and began typing the text of the will. He read it aloud. I, Evelyn Vance, of sound mind and memory, bequeath my entire estate as it belongs to me on the day of my death to Chloe Jefferson. He looked up. Ms. Vance, are you aware that you are disinheriting your husband? Yes, I am aware. That is my express wish. Are you acting of your own free will, without coercion? Yes, I confirm. Evelyn's eyes fixed on the notary, dispelling any doubt about her resolve. The notary nodded and printed the form with a portable mini-printer. O'Connell filmed the entire process with his cell phone camera. Evelyn signed with a trembling hand. The notary affixed his seal and attested to it. The witnesses were Tiffany and a nurse from a nearby department, whom O'Connell had brought in at the last minute to prevent any challenge. When everything was over, the notary placed the document in an envelope. I will deposit it in the notary's office. Tomorrow morning, I will make certified copies. Everything is legal. There is no longer any legal point of attack. Evelyn nodded. Her strength was rapidly failing now. O'Connell leaned forward. Ms. Vance, I will take care of the toxicology. I will request all analyses and engage the district attorney's office. Paul will be held accountable. Thank you, she whispered. The word was a breath of air, but it carried the weight of a mission accomplished. Everyone left. Only Chloe remained. She stood by the bed, not knowing what to say. Her mouth was dry. Go home, Evelyn said tiredly. We'll see each other tomorrow, maybe. And remember what you promised. Chloe nodded and went out. Evelyn remained alone. She stared into the darkness outside the window and thought, 3 days, maybe less. But she had done it. She had robbed Paul of the thing he killed her for. That was the only thing that mattered now. She felt no pain, only a deep, cold calm. The revenge had given her more peace of mind than all her wealth. She died during the night, quietly, without torment. The nurses found her in the morning. When Paul learned of it, he burst into a loud, demonstrative display of tears in the hallway. The clinic staff, whom he had treated with arrogance for 3 years, comforted him. He thanked them, pressing his handkerchief, and triumphant sparks danced in his eyes. He thought he had won. The morning began with a phone call. Paul Garrett sat in Evelyn's office, which he now considered his own, flipping through documents, property deeds, bank statements, lease agreements. All this wealth now belonged to him. 3 years of waiting, 3 years of playing the loving husband. The result was now before him. He had already opened Evelyn's safe last night after the supposed triumph, found the analysis reports, but dismissed them as nonsense. He had thoroughly checked Evelyn's premarital asset status. Flawless. No community property. He was the sole heir. He leaned back in the leather armchair and stretched. The smell of Evelyn's perfume, still lingering in the air, no longer bothered him. It was the scent of his victory. Outside was a clear October day. The leaves on the trees shone yellow and orange. Beautiful. Paul smiled. Life was settling into place. His phone vibrated. Victoria Shaw, his mistress, the pharmacist he had bribed, who had procured the rare drug for him. She was cold, pragmatic, and the only person who shared his contempt for Evelyn. He answered, "Yes, my dear. How is it going?" His mistress's voice sounded cautious. "Great. She died last night. Quietly, without witnesses. The doctor said liver failure. No questions. Everything is safe." "Absolutely. I calculated everything. The dose was minimal, spread over months. The drug breaks down quickly. There are hardly any traces left. Even if someone checks, they won't find anything. I'm a genius, Victoria. Who looks for murder when someone dies of organ failure at 49? Victoria was silent. She wasn't as certain of victory as he was. And the will? What will? She didn't draw one up, I checked. The entire estate is from before the marriage. No children. So I inherit as the husband. The law is on my side. He radiated self-satisfaction. I hope you're right. Paul, don't wait too long. Take care of the formalities and then let's disappear. Vivi, don't be nervous. In 6 months, I'll have everything sorted. Sell the hospitals and properties and we'll move away. Anywhere you want, overseas. The money is enough for several lifetimes. We'll open a clinic in the Caribbean, but just for ourselves. Victoria sighed. Good. Just be careful. Take it slow. Play the mourner. People need to believe you are devastated. I am a professional, Paul sneered. Don't lecture me. I played the role of my life for 3 years. He hung up and went to the cabinet where Evelyn kept her collected cognac. He poured himself a glass, sipped it. Excellent. Everything in this house was excellent. And now it belonged to him. He felt like a king who had reclaimed his throne. There was a hard knock at the door. The housekeeper, an older woman with red eyes, entered. She had served Evelyn for 20 years and always looked at Paul with suspicion. Mr. Garrett, the attorney is here for you. Jason O'Connell. He's not alone. Paul frowned. O'Connell. That man had always been too smart and too observant. Evelyn had entrusted him with all legal matters. What did he want? Was he coming to settle his fees? Let him in. O'Connell appeared in the office, elegantly dressed in a suit and with a serious face. His gaze was hard and judgmental. He didn't offer his hand in greeting, just nodded. Mr. Garrett, my condolences. Thank you. Paul put on a grieving grimace. This is a tragedy. I am devastated. He gestured to the cognac. Would you like a drink to calm your nerves? No, thank you. I need to discuss some legal matters with you. It cannot wait. I'm listening. Please, have a seat. O'Connell sat down without being asked and pulled out a file. The file looked thin, but its contents already seemed ominous to Paul. Evelyn Vance left a will. Paul tensed up.